thank you everyone who show up for today. Now we have a long list, so I just hope that some of our registered member would come before we start the new presentation. So back again, Mai already talked about our effort, but we here is a nonprofit organization called Lyceum, Life Skills and Professional Development for Success. And it's actually under the umbrella of the Institute for Civic Education in Vietnam, which is a nonprofit organization based in Houston, Texas, but its scope is around the globe, especially focused on Vietnam for all the educational programs to really to build the civil society at the grassroots level. And basically 3 years ago, I quit my job to formally become a full-time employee for this nonprofit, and I started Lyceum. And we are a non-profit social enterprise that provide all the fee-based training, coaching, speaking services to serve the communities. And as COVID-19 hit everyone around the globe, we saw the needs to help people to truly anchor on their best so that they can best coping with all the pressure and the stress that we currently experiencing. And that's the reason why we put this, let us connect through social distancing, distancing online. Okay. So can you mute everyone, Mai? Help me to do that so that we can keep the sound. Okay. So before we start with Dr. Rob Pennington, I would like to say a few words about him. We're very lucky to have Dr. Pennington to be with us. This is the second year, the second time that he presents. Last month he did something that a very popular topic, which is speeding through stress in 5 steps within 15 seconds. So everybody heard about that and said, oh, I want to know. And it was a very engaging and wonderful presentation. And Dr. Rob Pennington is my mentor in the Houston chapter of the National Speaker Association chapter in Houston Academy. And he has been so much helpful. Every time I meet him, I learned something new from him. And he's a lifelong learner, so I learned a lot from you, and I greatly appreciate his heart. Because when I asked Dr. Pennington, can you provide some of the pro bono services for this workshop? He said, sure, why not? And here he is again to serve. And I told him that this time we might have some participants from Vietnam. Now, and in Vietnam right now it's 7 a.m. So they probably will have to get up early to join us. So we'll see how it goes. And Dr. Rob Pennington is a psychologist, and he practiced psychologist as a therapist for a while, counseling psychology, and also a presenter. He received so many awards. Won the Outstanding Speaker Award for the Mental Health America, and he's an award-winning author for his autobiography called Find the Upside of the Downtimes. And he also have a wonderful workbook on the web that I share with you in this presentation. Feel free to check it out. And Dr. Pennington, words are not enough to show our appreciation with your time and your effort. And today, the topic is about worries. So before we go into the presentation, I just would like to ask everyone to do a poll, to share something about you. It could take only a few minutes, all right? So do you see the poll? Everyone, do you see the poll?
Yes, I do. I see the poll.
Okay, great. So would you please take a few minutes, just enter the poll. I'll give it just like a few, 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can end the poll to share how everybody is doing right now. And this will give some kind of a post of the audience before Dr. Pennington started his presentation. Okay, I think we had to, let's see. Yeah, I think we have nearly everybody. All right. I am going to end the poll within 5 seconds. Anybody else have not? Okay. Okay, I will end. And here is the result. Do you see the result? Dr. Pennington?
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
All right. All right. So we have a few attendees that worry a lot these days. And so hopefully this will help you to achieve some actionable items. Okay, I'll stop share result. Please join me to welcome Dr. Rob Pennington. Yeah.
Yay! Well, thank you all for being here. I'm really happy to get to share some things that have made a profound difference in my life that help me every day. I'm going to share some insights about that. I've also got a very specific 4-step process about how to turn a worry into an action plan towards a goal. And at first, that's kind of an awkward process. I'm going to go through and give you an example today, and I'm going to show you where you can download the handouts to work on it yourself. But after you've gone through it a number of times, what I've found is that it really does influence the way I think. And I think that's what we all need. But I want you to know something about me. I think my credibility for this is not that I have a PhD. That just means I know how to use a library. Really, I've been fired. I've been divorced. I've been depressed. I've been self-employed for 40 years, which means I've been unemployed for 40 years trying to find work. I was shot in the center of my chest by an unknown assailant with a .38. I've had multiple IRS audits. I was remarried with 2 children, 2 teenage stepdaughters. I was caregiver for my wife and my parents for many, many years, and I've been widowed, and my wife passed away from multiple sclerosis. So I've had a lot of opportunity to worry. And I wrote a book about it. And so in beginning to share some things, I just like to, so that's the book she mentioned, Find the Upside of the Downtimes. This is autobiographical. Every chapter has a story from my life and the lesson I learned and the activities that I am hoping someone else will benefit from. And tonight we're going to be focusing a lot on turn a worry into gold, chapter 2. And one of the things I want to recommend is if you have the gallery view on, go ahead and click to make it just the speaker view. That'll show up better for what we're doing. So I think most people worry. I mean, you've mentioned that. I'm just curious how many of you are worried more today than a month ago? You know, raise your hand. and how many of you are more uncertain about the future? Raise your hand. And how many of you are projecting a negative into the unknown? Because I think that's a habit that we have and is really what the definition of worry is. So it's just a habit we all have. You know, someone said they worry some of the time. I think everybody worries some of the time. It's just a way we do things. It's a habit. So I want you to think about the definition. So is worry thinking wonderful, happy, successful thoughts? No. Isn't it thinking horrible, disastrous, terrible thoughts? Absolutely. I mean, and I'm just kind of curious about, is there anyone here who's a good worrier? You know how to do it? You don't have to practice anymore? Anyone here got that down? You got that? Okay. I'm wondering if there's anyone here who comes from a long line of worriers. You know, you know, just most of us have learned that anytime anything or anyone is not the way we want it to be, you know, that's our response is to worry about it. But I do think that some of us were trained by a long line of worriers. So how many of you were taught to worry when you should? That was kind of part of being a serious, responsible, mature adult is to worry when you should. I mean, what do you think about when you're walking down the street and you see someone smiling and bopping down the street? What do you think about them? What's wrong with them? What are they on? They're crazy. How many of you had someone say this to you? Of course I worry. It's because I love you. Anyone had that said with that tone in mind? I think we all did. But, love is not that. That's just what I want to emphasize. We've been taught that the way to demonstrate we care, to demonstrate we love, is to worry. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what love is. That's not what love is. Okay? Love is not imagining someone failing, including yourself. That wouldn't be loving for you. Love is not teaching people to be afraid or to have self-doubt or to think that they can't. Henry Ford said a wise thing. He said, there are people who think they can, and there are people who think they can't, and they're all right. I've personalized that where I say, whether I think I can or I think I can't, I'm always thinking I'm right. All of my worry is about when I think I can't. And that's not what love is. Love is the ability to help those you love believe they can. That's what I think we all need to learn how to do more, to be able to, when someone's thinking that something, they have doubt about, but they can believe in themselves. She believed she could, so she did. And she wouldn't have been able to if she didn't believe it. This is very powerful. If you don't believe you can do something, by definition, you can't. If you believe you can, it doesn't mean you're going to, but at least means you got a chance. It means you're going to be open to figuring out the how of doing that. We need to be able to realize that love is the ability to imagine those you love as if their lessons were already learned. And this is based on the idea that your personality is made up of two things: the lessons you've learned and the lessons you haven't learned. And all your worry, all your stress is about an unlearned lesson. If you knew how to handle something that you're worried about, you wouldn't be worrying about it. So by definition, anything we're worried about is some fearful possibility that we don't want to handle because we don't think we could handle. And that's an important way of thinking about things because it makes a difference. But before you can do this for anybody else, you got to do it for yourself. You can't do for another until you've done it for yourself first. And you have to be able to think that you can. And here's the trick: without knowing how. Most of us say, well, I can't believe I can. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But it's not actually required to know the how to believe that you can. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of them is begin at the end. He's just saying, start at the goal and start figuring out how to get from here to there. You don't have to know how you're going to get there to take the first step. And that's what I want you to really learn how to do, is to realize the difference between seeing something as a stumbling block and seeing it as a stepping stone. The same thing. And my whole book is about stuff that when they happen, I thought it was like one of the worst things that ever happened to me. But in hindsight, and at the beginning of every chapter, it's like, I got shot in the center of my chest. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. My wife threatened to divorce me. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. In the hindsight, it's hard to know that in the beginning of things, but you could learn to practice doing that. And when we're worrying, we're not doing it. Okay? So worry, like stress, is evidence of an unlearned lesson. Once you learn the lesson, you go on to other lessons. So it's not like we're ever going to stop having stress or we're ever going to stop worrying. One, it's a habit. And two, we're constantly facing things we don't know. The world is uncertain. We're always going to be dealing with changes, and often undesirable and unexpected changes, like the big one we're dealing with tonight in the pandemic. But we have to practice in what I call the elementary school lessons in life to be strong in the graduate school lessons in life when the big challenges come. We have to be able to deal with doubt in all those challenges, because that's where we're going to be able to learn how to do a fundamental thing that I want to focus on right now. And that is this insight that worry, by definition, always points in a direction you don't want to go. Worry is always about something you don't want to have happen. What you're worrying about is something you think is going to happen, but you don't want it to happen. So what's the opposite of what you don't want to have happen? It's what you do want to have happen. And there's a word for that. What you do want to have happen is called a goal. You're not going to be able to stop having worries. That's just human. But what you could do is learn how, wait a minute, that's not the direction I want to go in. What's the opposite of it? And you can learn how to flip it into what I call the positive opposite possibility, which is always the direction you want to go. Now, that doesn't mean at that moment you're going to know how to go there. You're not. But that doesn't matter. Setting the goal is the first step in getting there. That's what's important. Because, your body doesn't know the difference between what you vividly imagine and actual reality. You could just be sitting at your desk. And if you're worrying, your body's going to react to the worry as if what you're worrying about is actually happening. If this is what's in your mind, how many of you got more stuff to do than you can get done? Everybody? Okay. How many of you are waiting to get it all done so you have some time to feel good and enjoy yourself? Okay, now when is it going to happen that you get it all done? Never. And let me warn you about this. I think most everybody is going to die with things not done. I don't think my mother's going to die with things not done because she believes she can't die as long as she's got something left to do. And she's 92 years old, so she's got something going there. But I think we have this habit of projecting negative things into the unknown and feeling what it would feel like. And then it feels like, oh, I should be thinking this because look at how I'm feeling. You can't trust that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There we go. What if worry was a warning sign asking you, where are you going? Do you want to go down this path? Or would you rather go, the other way, which is towards the goal? That's the direction you want to be thinking about going. Which one would you rather be doing? So here's an example of something that happened to me. I got shot in the center of my chest many years ago. And, there's a whole video at speedthroughstress.com, but there's something that I don't tell in that video that I'm going to tell now. And that is, I didn't have any health insurance. And I got a massive hospital bill. And so that was a good reason to worry. I have a hospital bill, no health insurance. Now, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because I'm not able to pay it off. Now, I want you to follow this process. This is called discovering the real worry. So what's the problem? What bad is going to happen? That's the question to ask. What bad is going to happen? If I'm not able to pay it off, then what bad is going to happen? Well, debt collectors are going to start calling me and hounding me and everything. And eventually, if that keeps doing, then what are they going to do? I'm going to be taken to court. And someone, your microphone's open.
Oh, sorry. If someone tried to.
Someone else is on, yeah, because it's causing some noise. So I'm going to go to court. Now, why is that a bad thing? Well, maybe it's not so bad because maybe I'll get a good lawyer. In fact, I had an uncle who was a lawyer. He wouldn't have charged me anything if I had to do that. But let's say that doesn't happen. He didn't help. I go to court. I'm ruled against me. Then what happens? They foreclose on my house. And why is that bad? Well, I'm going to lose my house. But hey, I could get a new house with a new spouse with a new house. It's always, it's a roller coaster thing, and we only take it down in the twos. We never consider the other possibility. But let's say that doesn't happen. I lose my house. My spouse goes with the house. Now where am I? I'm a bag person. Now, what do bag people worry about? They worry about being a bagless bag person. They worry about losing their bag. But hey, I could find a new bag and I'm on my way up again. So I'm going to, with somewhat humor, this is actually a fearful thing that happened to me. So I actually went through these thinking in my mind and was feeling frightened and terrifying. How am I going to pay this off, etc. So this is the worry on purpose. And the real things that bothered me were all these things down here about losing my house and my spouse. If none of that ever happened, then the things at the top is not a bad problem. And in fact, in this example, where is reality? Well, it's only in one place. I had a bill and no health insurance. That's reality. Everything else is fantasy. And your body doesn't know the difference between what your mind vividly imagines and what's actual reality. So what I learned to do is, this is a first step called worry on purpose. And then the next step is how to, what I call discover the first fearful fantasy, because that's the thing you want to focus on. What's the first fearful fantasy? The first thing that's not true, that's the worry that I want to flip into a goal. So here's what I just went through. And now what I do is you start at the bottom. So you write all this down, and this is the second step. You start at the bottom and you ask yourself, not would this be bad? Of course it would be bad. You're worrying about it because it would be bad. The question to ask is this true and real and happening right now? And if the answer is no, then tell yourself what is happening. So am I, in that moment, I was asking myself, am I a bagless bag person? No, what is true? Well, what's true is I'm alive and at home. And am I a bad person? No. Have I lost my house and spouse? No. I have a house and spouse and I love. Was my house foreclosed? No. In fact, the value of my house had gone up 4 times. These are the reality things while I'm worrying about things. I mean, I've been self-employed for 40 years. There's lots of times when I was afraid I didn't know how to pay my bills. But I've never not paid my bills. And I've balanced faith and responsibility in the sense of, I assume I'm going to pay my bills, but if I ever was unable to, I'm willing to deal with that reality. So I'm willing to deal with something if it happens. And if it's not happening, I don't have to deal with it. If you're willing to deal with something when it's happening, you don't have to deal with it when it's not happening. So was I taken to court? No, no subpoena. Was I being called by it? No, no. Was I not able to pay off? Well, it hadn't happened that I had to pay it off all. Did I have the hospital? That was happening. So in this moment, the only thing that was real, and for some reason I keep losing my cursor, and there was a reality, and everything below that's a fantasy. So here's the third step, and that's how to flip the worry into action plans. You have to identify the fourth thing right there. So the first fearful fantasy below the line was the first not being able to pay. So what's the opposite of not being able to pay? Okay, someone else's mic is open somewhere. And the goal is being able to pay the bill. Okay, now where you focus is on what's reality and what actions you can take dealing with reality. So what are the actions you could take that will move you towards the goal? Now, you're not going to see everything that will take you there, but you could see the first step. And from there, you'll see things you didn't see beyond that. Okay? So you always want to just take a step in the direction of the goal. Like, call my uncle and ask for help, call the hospital. And so what I did do is I signed a contract to pay monthly for a long, long time. So that kind of prevented a lot of that stuff from happening. But I still was very worried about it until I came up with an amazing insight about the reality of things. The reality was I had a bill from the hospital. But the reality is the hospital just wants it paid. They don't care whether or not I pay it. They just want it paid. So I came up with the idea that it might be possible to have the whole thing paid off without me having to pay it. And I thought, well, maybe I could win the lottery. Or maybe I have a wealthy relative who's going to leave me a lot of money. The funny thing is, I did have a wealthy relative. I didn't know they were wealthy. They didn't leave me anything, so that didn't happen. But it was a possibility. But I started feeling so much better just about that one of the actions I took when I was doing trainings, I would be talking about my own life and my own worries and these things I was going through. And I started talking about this story about just how it made a difference in how I felt. And then I was curious about how it could get paid without me paying it. I just had this belief it was possible. I didn't know how, but I was just talking about it because that's an action I could take. And in one of my trainings, one of the people raised their hand and they said, there is a way for you to pay it without you paying it, with it being paid. And I said, what's that? And they said, it's the Texas Crime Victims Compensation Board. I did not know what that was. I've never heard of it. It was beyond my knowledge. And if I hadn't been talking about that, I never would have found out about it. I'd probably still be paying 30 years later on that hospital bill. But Texas Crime Victims Compensation Board, when they, arrest a criminal, they take their resources and put it in this pool. And when victims apply, and I applied, and they paid everything. So it is possible, and it does happen. Now, there are a couple of options you can have here. You can do what I'm saying, which is flip the worry, the first fantasy, into a goal, and then take action towards it. That's what I'm recommending. But if you find yourself continually worrying about, like you're losing your spouse or something like that down there, come up with a plan, of what you're going to do if that ever became a reality. Then you don't have to worry about it if it's not happening. So you either can come up with an action towards the goal, or you can come up with a plan based on some fearful fantasy, or the only other option is you can worry. That's it. So those are the options we have. And I'm going to put that link in the chat when we get back off of this. I can't do it right now. But I want to just remind people of my third definition of stress that was in the first program. Stress occurs whenever I'm unable to create a positive image in my mind. And that's why, and relates to that, I don't have to know the how to do that. And I just want to let you know that stress and worry, well, they're the same thing. I don't think we're ever worrying we're not experiencing stress. And our stress is because of that. So go back and watch the other Speed Through Stress, 5 Steps, 15 Seconds, the video about me getting shot. There's a 50-page workbook. It's all free. Change your life. It's changed mine. And I just want to reinforce some things. Sometimes bad things that happen in our lives put us directly in the path to the best things that ever happened to us. And we probably wouldn't have gotten there otherwise. And it's hard to think of that in the present. And that's what I try to do in the book. That's what I try to do in all my coaching. That's what I try to do in my own life is, I still am stressed. I'm still worried, but not for as long. I learned to recognize it quicker and move through it faster. And I have these models that I've practiced for decades that help me deal with the challenges, because there's still a lot of challenges. There's still a lot of unknowns. But what you got to do is just this, just breathe. You're strong enough to handle the challenges. You're wise enough to find a solution to the problems, and you're capable enough to do whatever needs to be done. I think that's true. You ought to write that down, put it on your wall. When I was in college, I did something that at the time, I just was doing it because it was fun. But now I know it was incredibly brilliant and genius. I lived in a co-op, and I was living in a bunk bed. And I was on the bottom level of the bunk bed. And so it was kind of in a corner of the room. And so I had this wall at my head and all the way down me. And what I did is every time I was inspired by a thought like this, I wrote it on the wall. And I went to sleep into those ideas, and I woke up from those ideas every day. And there were a lot of them that I put on that wall in the, I think, 2 years that I lived there. I went back to visit 10 years later. All of those thoughts were still on the wall, and that was the prized bed in the whole building. This is important stuff. And this is the summation. This is all you need to know. Life is a school and love is the lesson. And anytime you're stressed and worried, you're not doing it. And it's just because there's some challenge you don't know how to deal with. And all you got to do is flip it to the goal and take one action, and you'll begin moving in the direction of that. So this is the summation of what I have to say. If you have anything else, you can go to this kiwilive.com and just put in the word stress. And there's a whole bunch of additional resources that I put together. I have an e-magazine that I'm constantly putting up new articles on. And then here's the URL for the handout for tonight that I will put into the chat when we come back. So that's all I got for my presentation, and I thank you so much for being here. And hopefully we can have a discussion now, and then maybe some more Q&A. So let me close this up and pass it back.
Awesome. Oh, that was so awesome. So many wonderful reminders. Thank you so much, Dr. Pennington.
I'm grateful to get the opportunity to share this. Again, it's just been what's made a whole difference in my life.
Can I ask some questions?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm hearing some basic key thing that you mentioned that I resonate so well would be, it's all in your mind, right? So basically, we tend to think about the worst case, the worst scenario. So put it back into the global pandemic right now, right? Um, we are we all are, uncertain about when this will be over. And there's a lot of people who lost their jobs. So the situation right now is very hard to focus on the goal if we don't even know.
If you focus on the global, you will be overwhelmed and paralyzed.
Okay.
You can't. One, because you have no control over it. You can do nothing about it. All we can focus on is ourself and our life and our family and the challenge before us. The more we think about, oh my God, how horrible everything can be, which there are horrible things happening. People are dying, and in some ways needlessly. There's all kinds of things that are going on all the time. This is just one big thing, but there's hundreds of thousands of people who die every year from tobacco. There's so many people who die from crime. There's a lot of death in the world. In fact, everyone is going to die. So all of us are going to. It's just overwhelming when you're trying to stop something that can't be controlled by you. And the more your mind is on that and feeling your compassion and your empathy for those who are hurt, if you can do something to be helpful, do it. So I went to HEB curbside this morning, and there was a guy who I fairly well believe was a veteran who was homeless, and he had the courage to ask for help, and I gave him money, and I wouldn't probably have done that in the past. And my mother was telling me about her grandmother during the Depression would always have pies on her back window for the guys who were, trying to find work and stuff. And she would always feed them when they came to her house, and they would offer to do work and stuff like that. So I hope I'm kind of carrying along a little tradition there. Always, whatever people bring, I try to tip them way big, more than I normally would for every, delivery, because I know they're at a risk, and I'm, at risk too because of my age and health, but I'm awful safe here in my house. I just don't go out, I have breakthrough. But the focus is on your own health. And I think if we're all doing that, just think of the world taking care of themselves. And sometimes when the door closes on us, that whole thing about a door closes, a window opens. But that's kind of not quite accurate. I do believe when a door closes, a window opens, but it's usually behind us. We usually have to make a change to find the window. And so a lot of times people don't want to make the change. So a lot of times people have more difficulty in their life because they don't want to make a change to adjust to something that's happened for them or to them. And that can be a death. It can be losing your job. And by the way, I've experienced both of those. It can be losing your health, which unfortunately I have not. But there's these big things that happen to all of us over time that we need to have compassion for ourselves and for each other. And so every time we interact with people, we need to be kind because we don't know what the challenge is. So that's my answer to, global pandemic challenges of war or illness or whatever the challenge are that people are harmed and die from, is how do we focus on ourselves and how do we do what we can to be helpful within our limitations. Otherwise, I think you're just going to be paralyzed in fear.
Right. There's another question from Veronica. What makes some people more prone to worry than others?
Boy, that's a big question, and there are a lot of answers to that. Sometimes I think it literally is genetic. That I think, just like someone might have a predisposition to play the piano easier or to sing easier, I think some people have genetic weaknesses in certain areas of the body. That's why you have like skin cancer go through the body, or you might have, other kinds of illnesses seem to go through the body. I think nervous disorders can make you vulnerable. Now, that doesn't mean that you will get whatever that illness was. It just means under stress, you might be more vulnerable to it, that there may be some intrinsic weakness within our body for that. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think everybody's taught to worry. And so some people learn it really well, maybe too well. I worked with depression for 30 years, and I never saw anyone who was depressed for no reason. Okay. I think people have difficulty dealing with changes and they don't know how to pull themselves out of the grief. Right? A lot of depression was grief. A lot of depression is internalized rage. So they're too scared to kill someone, so they're going to think about killing themselves. So oftentimes a suicide is a misdirected homicide. So there are a lot of factors that contribute to it. I think for most people, it's they just don't know how to be responsible for their own emotion. Now, sometimes it can be such a level that you need medication. I really am for medication. But I think people realize that's not sufficient. That's just helping you get back to the template about what a healthy body should be. So the way I think about, like with depression and anxiety, it's like you're out in the ocean, you're over your head, you're putting all your effort into breathing, and you just can't tolerate that for long. So medicine is like a life preserver. You're still out in the ocean, you're still out over your head, but now you don't have to put so much effort into breathing. Now you can take your breath, and now you can use therapy or coaching to figure out where the shore is. So you don't need the medicine anymore. But I think there's a certain small percentage of people that their body just never goes back to the correct template. My wife with multiple sclerosis, she had antidepressant and anxiety all the time because she had physiological damage. So, if someone has physiological or neurological damage, then medicine's absolutely necessary. And some of that you can do something about, some you can't. So there's lots of different reasons why people have a high level of anxiety or high level of worry.
I see. Yeah, and it's very hard. Like, can I share a personal story?
It's your show.
I'm the one that suffer from worrying too much. My mother, has that kind of gene. She worry a lot, and somehow I worry a lot, and I didn't realize how it impacted my health until I got some big event when we actually changed some job and changed the environment, and I realized that I need to work on it. And from the time I make a decision to make rewire my brain, it starts with awareness. Every time that worries show up, I know that it will show up, right? And then, but it took me 10 years to totally kind of controlling and really managing it. So it still show up. But now
notice you were trained by a master worrier.
Yeah.
And so right. How long did you live with her? 18 years or so? And so you got cooked in a certain way. And if you weren't that way, she would have worried more about you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the big reasons why no baby is born with self-doubt. No baby is born worried. All of that stuff we learned, from people who thought it was best to teach us that because they thought that was what they would. You come down, hundreds of generations of these habits of things. And you're right. A lot of times we don't realize that it might not be good for us to do until we're having physiological symptoms.
Absolutely.
That gets our attention. How we think causes how we feel. How we feel causes how we behave. How we behave produces results in our life. Unless there's chemical or neurological damage, that's a law. And there are only two ways you can think, positive or negative. So if you don't like how you're feeling and you don't have neurological chemical imbalance, then there's something wrong with how you're thinking.
The lens that I use to look at things, because I let fear, and I have heard something like fear is stands for false evidence appear real.
Yes, that's true. And that's what I've tried to point out. Is
evidence appear real. So fear is like you said, it doesn't happen yet, but we all caught up with that, right?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Often when I'm worried about something is it happening right now? So when we lost a lot of contracts in March and had nothing on the books and looking at like, where is any income coming from? It's real easy to get scared. But I've practiced this a lot and I've been through that a lot. And, again, the balance is I'm willing to put effort into producing the result I want. But if what I'm afraid of becomes real, I'm willing to deal with that. Like I knew my wife had multiple sclerosis a year before we got married. I knew it was possible she would die while we were married. I chose to have a wife with multiple sclerosis. So I'm not resisting a negative change, choosing to be with it. And that's the key to all stress and worries. Just choose to do what you're doing while you're doing it. So if you're going to be inside, don't resist being inside, choose to be inside. They're just simple little ways of making life better. And I think, someone made a comment about, don't watch the news as much. Well, if the news is going to be basically the same thing and basically bad every day, I don't need to watch it every day to remind myself that, people are not being how I would like them to be. So I can check in every once in a while when I want to, but I don't have to take a huge diet of it. I mean, I spent some time this afternoon watching a video of a guy taking a walk through the woods in a mountain range by a stream, so that I could smell the wetness of the leaves. I could feel the coolness of the dampness. So I've practiced using my imagination in a positive way, and most people don't. We've got two brains inside our skull, not one. And one is about the physical senses of the world, and the other is about the world of imagination. And everything you experience in the world that's physical, everything that's sitting around you, began in someone's imagination.
Okay, so there's some question here. Can I read it out? Sometimes we worry about other people and not about ourselves. How do we apply your framework of worry into goal when we worry about other people or worry about our relationship?
It's a great question. So when we worry about people, we're imagining them not learning the lessons of their life. We're imagining the horrible consequences they're going to have to experience in their life. And we want them to not experience those, of course. But I think the way to love someone is to assume, and this is the way I do it, that in the eternity of time, they will learn their lessons. Okay, I give everybody a long time to get it right.
It takes love, right? It takes love.
Yeah, and so I want to hold in my mind and heart their success at dealing with the challenges of their life. And I think that's called prayer. Anything you want, believing, and I think when we're imagining all the horrible things that could happen for people, we're actually kind of feeling what that would feel like. So I want to have the message I give to the people I love that I know they can handle the challenges that are before them. And if there's a way I could help, let me know. But you also have to let people have their own lessons.
Yeah.
I had a teacher of mine say, if the only way someone's going to look at the responsibility they have for their life, if the only way they're going to take that is for them to hit bottom, he said the most loving thing you can do is help them get there as quick as possible.
Fail fast.
We're always trying to keep them from hitting bottom, but if that's and some people require that. Some people are, dedicated to the destruction of their own life and every relationship they're in, and they're not going to look at it until they've, laid waste to everything. Well, you don't have to be a part of that. You don't have to be around that. And maybe helping them get there is having boundaries on yourself about what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate. But I always want to see what people's lessons are and imagine them as if they'd learned them. Like even with my daughter when she was in high school, I think she was embarrassed by the car I had. And so I would pick her up at school and I have to pick her up blocks away because she didn't want to see her friends, have her friends see her get into my car. And she would get in and she'd slide under the dashboard and go, 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 go. So that's the reality, okay? So how would she have handled that situation if she had learned the lesson that other people's opinions don't matter about your value and your worth? And so I'm sitting there imagining what it would be like if she had learned that lesson. So I'm imagining her getting in and going, hi, Rob, thanks for picking me up. So glad you took this time out of your day to help me out with this. I really appreciate it. Listen, can I get you an ice cream cone? So that's what's happening for me while she's under the dash yelling, go, go, go.
That's a very clever way. I just, with Zui, is that Zui Duan input, I guess, is for our loved one. We need to remember what we can control. If we focus on what we can control to help that person, that is the best thing we can do, right? But
yes,
you cannot control the other person. So
no.
Each person, and that is so tough if parents have children like that. And because they don't want their children to go through hardship, but sometimes...
Well, of course not. Of course not. We don't want anyone to have any pain or suffer in any way. But, that's the way people learn.
Yeah.
And you can't prevent people from doing that. All you can do is sometimes protect yourself from their destruction. And at the same time, keep saying, I know you can, and here's where I'm willing to help and where I'm not.
That's great. But suffering, you mentioned suffering, and I think suffering and happiness, it's like the two sides of the same coin. You got to embrace that as well, because it's like you can't have one or the other. And I've learned that through my journey of mindfulness practice. It's not about eliminating suffering. It's about
and I would say this. I would say pain is necessary. Suffering is optional.
You're right. Pain is yes.
Yeah. So we have difficult circumstances, but we don't have to stay in them.
Exactly.
I think suffering is staying in them. Someone asked the question about differentiating worry from anxiety. I think they're basically the same. Anxiety can go off into, be so extreme it's a mental illness and you need treatment and therapy and medicine, et cetera. Worry's kind of before you get there, but they're similar in that they're always about generating a negative point of view.
Mm-hmm. And that's another question from Untitled Huang. These days, there are people who say, don't watch the news. The more you know, the more you will worry. Is the ignorance the right approach?
Well, I wouldn't say it's ignorance, but I do think ignoring. And so, if I can do something to change it, like vote, I'm going to do that. And if I am going to be affected by that, like with Congress voting money to support small business, I was very aware of that because I wanted to take advantage of that. And that's been huge in filling in the gap for us for a couple of months. So I was really on the news about that. And for a couple of weeks, that was just all I was thinking about. So I limit myself, to, I prefer, this is just my preference, I prefer to get the news from comedians. I prefer to get the news from people who are going to tell me what's happening, but, add some humor to it. I think that gives me enough of what the zeitgeist is of the moment in an enjoyable way, because I'm in charge of how I feel.
Exactly.
Not the world.
Yes.
Not anybody else. And I'm not going to give, people who I may think of as destructive, no matter what your politics are, power over how I feel during the day. But most everybody does. Most people don't think they have anything to do with how they're feeling. It's the weather. I can't feel good tonight. Oh, the weather. Even tonight. I mean, God, it was. My house was rattling earlier today. I was like, I've never heard this. And my mind goes, oh, it's going to happen during the talk tonight, and it's going to be so loud. It's going to be. That's what happens. It's a habit. But then I say, okay, I'll be willing to deal with that, and it'll be a good example of what we're talking about, and I can talk about how quick you can go through it.
It happens every day, right? It happens every time.
20 times a day. Anytime, anything, or anyone is not the way you want it to be. You're going to project in negative. But you can learn how to recognize it quicker and move through it faster. 5 steps, 15 seconds.
Trust me.
And then this whole turn worries into action plans. And by the way, thank you, someone, to tell me that URL didn't work. I realized I forgot a little piece of it. And so I just put up the corrected one up there. Oh, no, it still isn't correct.
No, it worked.
Oh, good. It did. Good. Right.
It worked. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But yeah.
Wu said that I tend to procrastinate and worry that I don't have enough time. I guess for that case, she just make a comment. But again,
well, we're never going to have enough time if we're worried about not having enough time. So one of the things I did that I think helps me a lot is when I'm in traffic and someone cuts in front of me, I realize what they're telling me when they cut in front of me is they don't have enough time. They have to take some of mine. So I slow down and let them in. It reminds me that I have enough time and that I don't have to compete with them about their belief. I can use that as an opportunity to remind myself I've got time. I think I discovered that once when I was in college and I was just rushing across campuses. I always rushed across campus because I was going things and doing things. And all of a sudden I realized I didn't actually have anywhere to go right then. And I just stopped and stood there on the mall, just realizing how I normally walked. And I started walking slower. I started giving, if you just move 2% slower in life, just 2% slower, I think one of the things that will happen is you'll reduce the number of mistakes you make. And there's some research that shows we spend 20% of our time correcting mistakes. And I think if you reduce, just slow down 2%, that's like 1 mile an hour out of 50 miles an hour, going 49 instead of 50. that's 2%. I think you'll reduce 80% of your mistakes. So if 80% of 20% of your time, you could get back 15% of your time by a 2% investment.
My husband will love that because he's always saying how I'm like, go, 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 go. And he's like, you gotta take the time, slow
Well, it's
down.
mainly about how you're experiencing the go, go, go.
Yes.
It's really about the half full versus half empty kind of thing.
Yeah.
And giving yourself permission to feel okay where you are. And, we're always anxious about what's coming next and are we going to do it? And we're going to do it well, et cetera. And I've just made a decision that it's okay for me to be me. It's okay for me to be me with my strengths and my weaknesses, with my successes and my failures. A whole ball of wax is okay to be. I believe that. I also believe that it's impossible for anything to happen I can't handle. I may have to change. I may need help. So I'm not having to always be finding the hole in the dike to put my finger in all the time. I'm okay where I am.
Okay. So we are about 5 minutes from the end, and I would like to ask everyone maybe we can have a quick pause. Like we have learned so much from Dr. Pennington about what worries means and some of the really good way to to change the way you feel, right? So we would like to do some polling, and actually we send out a survey to you guys. If you check your email, it will be there. But I would like to ask to launch a poll that just have two simple questions. One question is about the satisfaction that you feel right now after the workshop today about learning about worries and things, how you flip worries into a actionable goal. And secondly, it's more important is that have you identified some key action items that you can work with? Just like one thing that you would do differently, or one thing that you get out of this that you committed to. We just wonder how many of you would be committed to make some changes so that you can practice what we just discussed. So I'm going to launch a poll and give it a few 1 or 2 minutes, and please help us to and it's anonymous, so basically we don't know who's entered what, but it will give Dr. Pennington a sense of how much commitment from our audience in terms of turning worries into actionable goals.
2 people really liked it.
We have about 16 people.
Well, here's something I used to worry about, how people evaluated what I did.
Uh-huh.
And I don't worry about that anymore because I only share what I know has been valuable for me.
Yes.
I don't have any control about whether it's valuable for anybody else.
Exactly.
I'm hopeful that it is. I am sharing what I think are good seeds. They certainly have made a difference in my life. And I think that's the best I can do. So in a way, how people react tells me a lot more about their response to the ideas than about my value or my worth. Mm-hmm. That's something I worried about a lot long ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, look at that. There are like 8 people committed 100% to take an action. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's all you gotta do, take one step, go watch that video, go to speedthroughstress.com if you haven't, and hear me talk about my getting shot. Then you'll understand the hospitalization story better.
Okay, so there's a question from Andrew. If worry is necessary part of maturity, can you gauge what is the right level?
Well, what I said back to Andre is I said, if you're worrying about worry, it's probably too much. I said, worrying is normal. Learning to recognize when you're worrying and flip it to its positive opposite possibility is the goal. And that is the way how you can gauge it.
There you go. Okay, so 2 minutes.
And I really like what Kathy's saying. Yeah, write the worry down, because sometimes then you can let it go. And when the worry comes back, you can say, wait a minute, is what I'm worrying now different than what I wrote? No, it's the same thing. Let it go.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we have a lot of people who are satisfied with the workshop today. And I'm so happy to see that 100% of the people who attend the workshop, they either committed like more than 50%, and the majority is 100% committed. Because I think what really reflect in this, okay, so you all already see the result, right? So I'll stop sharing so that it get out of your screen. What really matters is that we have all of you get the information and make a commitment to create a change. And I really like what Dr. Pennington said about I am in charge of how I feel. And that is just a profound statement because it's all about your brain. You own your mind, or you let your mind own you.
And if
have
you
a
don't,
choice.
if you don't believe that, that's only something you created that you believe is true.
Yeah. Just like fear is false evidence that appear real. But when we are in a fearful mode, which most of the time right now we tend to,
I
right?
would say the feelings are very real.
Yeah.
The feelings that come from the fearful thought, they're absolutely real. The problem is we use the emotion as evidence of the truth of the thought. That's not
Right.
accurate.
Right.
It's just evidence that we have the thought, not that the thought is accurate. So you can't use your emotion for that.
Right. So we need to really say to ourselves that, okay, I acknowledge this thought, right? But it is a thought. It is not the reality.
Right. And if your thought doesn't cause you to feel good, I would encourage you to question it. You know, we tend not to question our thoughts. We just think whatever we think is right, or we wouldn't be thinking it.
And I really like the picture that you say, okay, you can think about going the wrong way and like worry, right? Or you think about the good things and you expect that. Even, in the worst situation, you still have your mind think about the good, alternative.
Right. And sometimes we need help.
Right.
And sometimes we need more inspiration. And sometimes we need a teacher. And sometimes we need medication.
Right. Right.
Oh, he's right about that. I used a simple approach to help us understand a very complex issue. Thank you very much for appreciating that.
Awesome.
That's a result of years of trying to figure out what would make sense for me. Okay. None of this is what I learned in college. That's for sure.
So I'm going to share the screen for the last slide, which is our event next week. So thank you, Dr. Pennington, for the wonderful workshop. But before we can stay a few, would you be willing to stay for a few minutes?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Okay. But I would like to share with you, for those of you who will be leaving at 8 o'clock, next week we're going to have another expert, and Dr. Veronica Powell is in the audience. Would you want to unmute so you can share some word about what you're going to talk about next week, Dr.
Oh, great.
Powell? She's in the audience.
Thanks for being here.
Veronica, are you still there?
Yes, I am still here. I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. Dr. Pennington, super amazing.
Thanks.
Presentation here, and I do like the simplistic way. I'm in behavioral health as well, and I must say it wasn't explained this simplistic in school.
No. You have to learn all the different personality theories first.
Exactly. So everyone, next week I'm going to present on how we can have healthy communication, living in a confined space with others, having to work in different settings now, and just mapping some of the processes that get us in trouble with how we communicate and how we can just come out on the other side of having some healthy and wholesome. I will tap into families of origin on how we learn how to communicate, and some of the polling will involve identifying what type of communicator you are and being true to thyself. I'll do a little piece on listening as well, because how can we communicate if we're not listeners? So that will be our go-to for next week.
Bravo.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for those of you, we're going to send out the email about, and actually it's already sent out, right, Mai? It's already been sent out. And you would you would just need to click on the link to register for next week. Also, we have a fuller, a longer evaluation form. We would appreciate if you can help us, please. Just take a few minutes to fill it in right now because it already been sent to you. And we have a Let's Connect to Social Distancing Facebook group where we would share all of these information in the upcoming workshop. So we would like to invite you to join us and invite other people who join us if you feel that is helpful for you. And so, Mai, you want to do the closing before we let everybody just leave, or somebody can hang around and say, but before that, could you please turn on your camera to see your beautiful face?
Yeah, if everyone can turn on their camera, maybe we can say, I'll say hello. And I don't have my phone. Maybe someone can capture a photo. Jinlan, do you have your phone there?
Yeah.
My daughter took my phone.
I only see your eyes. All right, here you go. And we have one participant from Vietnam. Is that Yui, right? Yeah, so it's a morning in the Vietnam.
Thanks for getting up early.
You want to share some word?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like 8 a.m. in Vietnam at the moment.
Awesome. Okay.
No, but it's not too early.
Thank you for getting up that early. And we really look forward to serving you again next week. And thank you so much, Dr. Pennington.
Happy to.
It's very simple. And as you see, you get everybody excited about, overcoming their own worries.
That's right.
Kathy, you want to say a few words? She's from Hawaii. Kathy is from Hawaii.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. So yeah, if anyone have any questions, it says, Roxanne said, my apologies for wearing camera. I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for making it available. That's awesome. And I know Woo Woo said she has to go, but of course, wants you to come back for more, Dr. Pennington.
Look forward to it.
Yes. I too worry because I have 2 young child. Sorry, you can hear my daughter now. I had to go.
It's just voice of love, voice of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So any word or any and Veronica, Dr. Powell, yeah, we see you now.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you next week.
Awesome.
Right. Okay. So I guess we can like, if for those of you who can leave, we can leave and we can hang around for another 5 or 10 minutes if we have some more questions. And then we can all and let me see, is there any other? But you can read the chat also, right, Dr. Pennington?
Yeah, I did. I looked through it.
Wonderful. What I like the most about your presentation, Dr. Pennington, is its simplicity, and the message is so simple, and it's relevant, and it's easy to practice.
Hopefully. It has been for me. I don't like work. It's too stressful. I try to make it as simple and as easy as possible for myself.
Yes. And for everyone, we will record this workshop, and then we will send it out just as a documentary for you.
And I'll make a copy of the handouts because I think some of those memes are really nice.
Okay. And if you have the presentation, if you have it online, it's even better. Like you mentioned about some link, right?
That was a link to a worksheet that someone could use, but I'll make a PDF of the PowerPoint or the keynote and make that available too. I'll send you all the link.
Thank you so much. So it's already late in Eastern time, so I just wish everyone a great evening. Except for Yui, would be a wonderful day. And we hope to see you again next time. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. And good morning, Vietnam.
Yes. Good morning, Vietnam.